Hello, and welcome to 5 Ways to Maximize Your Profits in an Omni-channel World. This is an Automotive News Power Training webinar, and it is being brought to you today by Max Digital. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Dave Versicle. I am the Chief of Editorial Operations here at the Automotive News Group. And before we get to our speaker, allow me to share just a few navigation tips to help you maximize your experience with this webinar. First, you're free to ask questions at any time, either during the formal presentation or during the Q&A session afterwards. Simply type them into the Q&A box. You're going to find that box on the left side of your webinar window. After you type in your questions, hit submit. They'll come to me, and I'm going to steer as many as I can to our speaker toward the end of this hour. Also, to enlarge the slides, just grab the frame with your mouse and pull it to the desired size. And to download the slides, click on the Handouts icon, which you're going to see at the bottom of your console. Our speaker today is Mike Cavanaugh. Mike is the Executive Vice President of Max Digital. Max, as you know, is a software company that provides inventory management, merchandising, and digital retail solutions to auto dealerships. He has significant past experience in the auto finance world. He's also the former COO of the CarRight used car network. And earlier in his career, he spent four years working in actual new car auto dealerships. So he's got street cred from a very young age. Welcome, Mike. Please take it away from here.
All right. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the webinar today. I'll get started here. And again, as Dave said, if you have any questions, we'll keep an eye on those and answer those towards the end of the webinar. So a little bit about me. Dave already gave you guys a little bit of background. Also, my little break from the car business was spent in the United States Marine Corps. So I've my background is not only in automotive, but also in the military. And just a little personal fact, I born and raised in Metro Detroit area, Michigan, here with my family. I still live today, lived all over the country, but came back to Detroit. So Dave gave you some background about Max Digital, a couple other points here. We've always been focused on maximizing the profit on every car. That is one of the things that are core to us and our products. We're dealer champions, no hidden agendas. We serve some of the biggest and best dealership groups in America and have for many years. And our focus is on providing the hardest working set of tools that help your dealership thrive through this retail transformation that we're going to talk a little bit more about today. So really, why are we here today? We're not here to talk about Max Digital or any of our tools at any kind of great length. What I'm really here to do today is to speak to some specific actions that you can take today to make more money in today's marketplace. So we're going to be drilling down to some common sense practices, some things that you can do, and talking about technology as well, but that's the main focus of the webinar today. So as you know, this is an omni-channel world that we live in. This is changing quite a bit from years past. So if we think back to, dealerships previously really being at the center of the transaction, customers had to visit a dealership to buy a car. And, they don't have to today. There's many options out there for a customer, but I truly believe that dealerships are still the backbone of our industry. The one thing that I would say is that the new front line, as we would have referred to it in the past, is now online. So we used to talk about cars being frontline ready, and now if they're not online, they're really not ready, they're really not for sale. If you look through the visual that I have on here, it kind of gives you an idea of what the previous sales process looked like in a dealership. So this isn't necessarily what it looks like today. Today, for most people, the process begins online. And, they don't have to come into a dealership anymore. There's companies out there like Carvana and Vroom that are servicing customers quite well across the country right now. And, you can be as critical as you want of either of those companies, but the reality is that they're selling thousands of cars a month to your potential customers. And why? They have cars just like you do. They have the ability to get these customers conveniently just like you do. However, they're engaging customers far better online and providing a better customer experience than traditional dealerships have historically. I know some amazing dealerships that do, as good or even a better job, but historically, customers have a perception that the process is not going to be very fun for them. So if you think about a customer shopping for a car online or in a dealership, the question I have for you is really, where do you think they're more comfortable? And I'll give you a hint, right? It's not at the dealership. Most of these consumers are a lot more comfortable shopping for their car online than they are in your dealership. So I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that's going to really make omni-channel easy for you. And these are the 5 key takeaways that we're going to drill down into over the next several minutes here. So the first one is be easy to find online. Next, make it easy to go far from home, right? Make it easy to go far into your sales process or into the customer's path to purchase from home. Next, be real. Be real with the customer. Share facts and deliver. Fourth, embed profit into your process. That's the key. I think, when we look at critical ways to evaluate some of those companies I talked about in the past, one of the critical things that people often look at is the profitability. So we're going to talk about ways that you can embed profit into the process, and then how to use tech to guide adoption. So first, be easy to find. And what do I mean by be easy to find? Well, I'll tell you. So 95% of vehicle buyers search online for information. It's hard to believe that it's not 100 at this point, but this is data from Google, right? That 95% of vehicle buyers search online for information, and the average customer spends about 14.5 hours online before purchasing a car. That's quite a bit of time they spend researching before purchasing a used car in particular here. And 60% of all automotive searches come from a mobile device, and some of the top mobile searches are related to dealerships. So this number continues to increase every year, and I believe it's going to continue to go up this year, the year after. So really being focused on mobile is a key. Now, what's key? Your online inventory is really key to this. So we like to say, make the car the star. Is that the dealership is really important to this whole process, but ultimately the customer is searching, in many cases, hundreds of different vehicles online before they come into your store. So you need to make sure that your online inventory is a very strong focus. So a couple quick key questions to ask here. Are all my vehicles online? This might sound very common sense, but I can't tell you how many dealerships that I interact with on a regular basis that all of their vehicles aren't online. And if they're not online, they're not for sale. Do they have real pictures, right? Consumers that we speak to say they're significantly more likely to click on a vehicle with real photos versus stock photos, and they're unlikely to click on a vehicle with no photos, right? So do you have real pictures of your vehicle? Do they have full factual descriptions? If you're missing packages, options, you're very unlikely to get that customer that's looking for that specific package or option on that vehicle, especially when it comes to luxury vehicles, high-end vehicles, to even click on that car, let alone reach out to you. And do they have full, not only do they have full accurate descriptions, but do they have an accurate price as well? So you need to make sure you have an accurate price online. And not only is the price accurate online, but is the price online the same as the price that you have on the vehicle when they come to your store? One of the number one things customers have told us is that when there's two different prices, when your price online and the price on the vehicle is different when they come into the store, that is the quickest and easiest way to erode trust in the process right away. And when I share some more statistics with you later about why customer visits to dealerships have actually gone up year over year, you'll understand a little bit more about why this is so important. So if we're looking at these two different vehicle descriptions, I'm going to give you an example about, almost the same car with different experiences. So we have kind of a history in the past of having a lot of creative writers on staff, I'll call it, that like to be very specific about when they, not only packaged and optioned out a car, priced it online, but when they generated the comments, they like to say things like, You know, this example on the left, the advanced traction control makes this one a huggy bear. I might even get my walking papers for pricing this so low. Or you can compare it to the right, where there's very specific, relevant information that the customer likely is looking for on this vehicle that can answer the questions right away. They know if it's a used vehicle, right? Is it a Carfax one owner? Does it have a clean history? Is it certified? How are the miles? What's the fuel efficiency? Does it have heated seats like I'm looking for in a moonroof? Right? All of those questions are answered really easily in that vehicle description. So the question for you is, which is more likely to drive interest from the customer? Now, I think the takeaway here is really don't try to sound like a stereotypical used car salesman in your ads. It doesn't work, and consumers say that it makes them less likely to visit that dealership when language like this is used in a vehicle ad or vehicle description. So advice here is to think like a customer. When you've got your vehicle listed online, first and foremost, you need to answer their questions. You know, is this the right car for me? Does it have all those features, options, benefits I'm looking for? Is this car a lemon? Is this a fair price that I'm getting on this vehicle? How does this compare to the market? Has it been reduced lately? Why is this car better than all the others that I've seen? Better compared to the other models maybe that are out there with different manufacturers, better than other similar used vehicles that may be the same make and model. And why should I buy from this dealer? This is often overlooked with dealerships across the country. And the advice that I give is don't be a commodity broker. If they've got, a customer has relatively endless options to buy a vehicle they're looking for, why should they buy from you? This is missed by so many dealers across the country, and it's key to make sure that when you have an opportunity to communicate this early on in the process, that you're communicating why they should buy from you. Next, I say make the vehicle easy to find and share. So if you're making your vehicles easy to find and share, there needs to be a way for this customer to share this vehicle with, you know, their significant other, their friend, gather their thoughts, their opinions on the vehicle. And in the research that we've done, consumers aren't looking to necessarily create an account and save this vehicle in a shopping cart as much as they're looking to simply save this to their phone. You know, make it easy to send themselves a text or an email that has this vehicle there, or share it with somebody, like I mentioned. Second point here, make it easy to go far into the process from home. So 99 out of 100 buyers, almost everybody that was surveyed, buyers expect their car purchasing experience to be hassle-driven. This is a shame coming from somebody that spent almost my entire life in the car business. This should be one of the most exciting times for somebody. They're buying a vehicle they're going to drive every day. It's something that should be exciting, that they should be happy about. Unfortunately, the majority of people think that it's going to be a hassle-driven process. Right? 56% of customers said they'd buy more often if the process was not so difficult. So the majority of customers said they would even buy more often if it wasn't so difficult. So what can we do to make it less hassle-driven and less difficult so customers do want to buy more cars more often? So what do customers want? They want transparency. They want transparency in the process and the pricing. They want ease and convenience. They want less stress and no haggling. We find this every year when we do our consumer studies. We find that consumers say they are not looking for a long, drawn-out haggling process. And they're looking for confidence and trust. Confidence and trust in the dealership and confidence and trust in the salesperson. And they're looking for value and quality at a fair price. Not necessarily the cheapest price in the market, but value and quality at a fair price is what we find. So if they can stay home longer, they're likely going to prefer the experience when they come into your store. Right now, I said this earlier, buyers are averaging 2.4 visits to the dealership and 2.3 test drives. This is up. I believe last year the stat was 1.8 visits to a dealership, and at one time I believe the lowest I've seen from these studies was 1.4 visits. So it's up to 2.4 visits last year and 2.3 test drives. And we might be wondering why. If there's all of these different technology providers out there that can allow customers to get further along in the process from home, why are they visiting more dealerships? Well, we're going to continue to dive a little bit deeper into here and and figure out why. So 60% decide on brand, model, and price before visiting the dealership. They've narrowed down their search quite a bit, but not completely. They don't know the exact vehicle they're going to buy, but they do have a good idea of brand, model, and price before visiting the dealership. I'm going to give you guys a real example here of how you can engage the customer. And I'll tell you, this is actually a communication that I received from a dealership when I was looking for a very specific truck. You know, they didn't have the best website. It was just a standard OEM-approved website. It's stock photos of the new truck, but they got the job done. You know, half of the battle is just having common sense and answering the question the customer asks, communicating with them in their preferred method and not forcing them to call you or being pushy with an appointment, right? So if a customer has a question about a vehicle, it'd be great to provide a better experience than this, but they got the job done. You know, this dealer actually gave me a payment via text. That was my preferred method of communication. And I told them that I needed to be in and out of the dealership. I had a busy day that day, needed to be in and out. I was able to come into the dealership, test drive the vehicle, sign all my paperwork, and I was out of the dealership in under 45 minutes. I would say that's a much more ideal experience than many customers get across the country at dealerships every single day. But it's really just common sense, and it's answering the customer's question that they ask, not trying to force them into your preferred sales process, and communicating with them in the method that they prefer. So if they text you or they message you, trying to get them on the phone, I hear frustrations from BDCs and salespeople all the time that this person never calls me back. And they may not want to talk to somebody on the phone. Or emails. We try to email people all the time, and maybe they don't check their email as frequently, and they don't want to email. So communicate with the customer the way they want to. It can be very effective by just implementing some common sense things. We'll move on to number 3, be real and share facts and deliver. So it would have been great if the dealership would have shared a more robust, better, user experience with me here, but they didn't. That's okay. But what you want to do is remember what the customer found online. If they found your vehicle online on your website, reiterating to them what they found online can be appreciated and help build trust, right? Just like when you go to a restaurant and they confirm your order when you pick out your takeout. They make sure that everything that you requested before you came in is in the bag, right? Is in the box. Do the same thing with your customer. Make sure that, this is the vehicle you're looking for. Here's the options. Here's the packages on this vehicle. And it helps them understand that and reinforce, really, not only that you listen, but that you care, that you pay attention, and that helps build trust in this process. And make it real with no changes, right? Validate all the information they saw online, like I said, and bring the digital experience to them. Make this real. So your process shouldn't only be digital when it's online before they come into the store. We hear of a concept called showrooming quite a bit, where customers are in the store and they should be in the store focused on your vehicle, the vehicle that they came in to look at, that they likely made an appointment for and showed up for. However, we often find those customers sitting across the desk from a salesperson on their phone almost the entire time. And what they're doing is they're looking at these other vehicles in the market. They're making sure that they're getting a good deal. If you can engage and keep that customer engaged on their own mobile device while they're in the store, paying attention to that specific vehicle and evaluating that vehicle that they're there to look at while they're in the store, our likelihood of success is significantly higher. You can even continue to educate the customer throughout this process as well. Next, embed profit into the process. This is, the most important part, right? We all love to sell cars. We all love to help customers, but we also like to make money when we sell cars and help customers as well. And unfortunately, those profits have been eroding over the years on new cars and on used cars. So, time for a new sales process. We did a study, and 45% of the dealers that we talked to said they're looking to change their sales process, with the majority wanting to adopt a more consultative approach. And this is great to hear. I think as an industry, we're resistant to change over time. We've been trained, kind of the road to the sale, the 12 steps through the process to get a customer to buy a car. And what we're finding over time is, that's not what customers want. And, fortunately, we're able to adapt over time and give them a better experience. So make sure you design the experience to deliver the strongest profit by inviting the buyer to participate in uncovering the real value of the vehicle. So from the first view, each interaction should build value. When they're looking at this vehicle and they're comparing, and you have to believe they're comparing you to all the other cars they looked at, right? They spent about 14.5 hours researching vehicles online before they came into your store, and they're probably still trying to spend time in that store evaluating other vehicles. We have to make sure that we're building value in this vehicle. Because while they may be looking at this 2018 BMW 4 Series 430i, all 2018 BMW 4 Series 430i's are not created the same, right? So if this particular one has an M Sport package, wouldn't it be great if you could educate that customer on what an M Sport package includes? And I have to tell you, I work with dealerships across the country, a lot of BMW dealerships across the country, and I don't think I've met a salesperson or a manager yet that could tell me everything that's included in an M Sport package and what the value of that package was at MSRP, right? So when you're building value, you're building this by educating the customer. And if they happen to be comparing this to another model that doesn't happen to have that package on it, well, now they're not comparing apples to apples, and it doesn't become about, I found this car for $500 less down the street. Can you match their price, or I'll go buy it there? It becomes about, wow, this really is a good deal for this vehicle because it has so many other options on it. Support the fair price. Continue to educate them through the process. Not only with package details and what's on here, this particular vehicle had $10,375 of additional packages on it, but also with market comparisons. Consumers look to third-party validations to ensure they're getting a good deal. Not only the third-party listing sites, but they want to see what are some of the book values out there? How much am I saving compared to maybe buying this car new versus used, in this case, almost $20,000. They're looking to compare those things. And the in-store experience must mirror all the same facts and value. So I'll go back to this. Why do I think that dealership visits are going up year over year? And it's because the online experience does not mirror the experience in the store. So there's a disappointment factor. When I've got a really robust experience, maybe the dealer's invested in a lot of the great digital retailing tools that are out there. They feel like it's going to be a very easy, seamless process. However, when they get into the store, they get greeted with how can I help you, right? Versus, Mr. Kavanaugh, we've got your 4 Series pulled up for you. I just wanted to confirm that, this was the specific vehicle you were looking at online. Yes, it was. And, they've got all the payment details worked out. They've got everything worked out online. Instead, they have to start over from scratch. So imagine the same experience. I'll go back to ordering your food at a restaurant, and if you showed up and they didn't have anything that you ordered ready for you, and you had to order it all over again, and you had to wait all over again for your food before you left the restaurant that day. That's the same level of frustration a customer has when their robust, beautiful online experience doesn't mirror their experience in the store, right? There's tools out there, like tools that we offer, that help you even show them those market comparisons on site without them having to go back to those other third-party sites out there to evaluate the vehicle. You can help become a source of education and value for that customer, and again, build trust and confidence that you are the right dealership to do business with. 78% of car shoppers wouldn't buy a used car without a third-party market price validation. I would say that's an overwhelming majority. So if that's a known fact, we need to make sure that this is implemented into the process, not only online, but in store as well. And with trade-ins, the customer can take an even stronger lead. The process carries the profit. So if a customer wouldn't buy a car without a third-party validation, we need to look at it and say, how likely are they to sell a car or trade in a car without a third-party market validation as well? I'm going to show you some ways that you can help improve your process here. So, guide the conversation with the customer. Simple questions can guide this conversation and take the pressure off your sales staff. You've got a digital tool that helps interact and engage with the customer, helps them rate their own vehicle in certain areas. They become much more involved in the process. It isn't simply, let me have your keys and let me have the used car manager take it for a spin. He comes back with a number written on a piece of paper that you don't think is fair because you weren't part of the process and there's no validation there. So if they're rating the value of their car, and I'll give you some examples here, and we've seen this play out across the country at dealerships as we've rolled out this particular tool that I'm showing you. People understand that their car is not a perfect 10 when they're guided through the key value levers here. So for example, if you're asking a customer about their tires and you say, if a 1 was bald tires and they didn't work and a 10 was brand new tires, you've got 40,000 miles in your car. The average tire life is about 50,000 miles. How would you rate your tire? Or brakes. Average brakes last about 40,000 miles. You've got 38,000 miles on your brakes. If brand new brakes were a 10 and brakes were out were a 1, how would you rate your brakes? You go through the process with the customer. They become part of appraising their own vehicle, right? This is no longer a one-way communication, somebody telling them what their car is worth. This is them actually telling you facts about their car that can lead to a purchase offer, right, for their vehicle. So how do you bridge the value gap? Your purchase offer needs to bridge the gap between their initial understanding, because you have to believe if they're looking to buy a car, they're also looking to see what their car is worth online. They're probably going to one of the many sites that are out there to get a value on their car. But you have to help bridge the difference between what their initial understanding may be coming in of their car's value and the actual fair market value with a transparent, fact-based process that they were involved in. So in this example, you give a customer a purchase offer, you confirm that all those packages and equipment are exactly what their car has on it, just like you did with the car they were looking at. Tell them they were the registered owner, they've never been in a collision, there was no aftermarket modifications, and unfortunately, you don't have a second key. As you know, you wouldn't want to buy a vehicle without a second key. We wouldn't want to sell a vehicle to a customer without a second key, so we're going to have to replace that, right? As we know, many keys now can cost, $300. So you give them some examples of book values. This example, the KBB trade-in was $23,116, and the NADA clean trade-in was $23,575. Want to reconfirm that this was how you rated your vehicle condition. Everything here looks accurate. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, yes, it does. Okay, great. So overall, you rated your vehicle about 77%. So what we're going to do is give you 77% of the higher book value number here. So 77% of that $23,575 is a purchase offer of $18,152. And you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, at how much better this works than the used car manager taking that car for a spin, writing down a number on a piece of paper, handing it to the salesperson that then comes back and says, here's what we're willing to give you. It works a whole lot better. So when you create the experience customers want, you tend to get the results that you want. And here's the results that we've seen. I'll share some very specific results with you. Tully BMW, we've seen a 20% increase in front-end gross profit. That's an additional $500 on average by implementing a process that I just outlined. Lexus of Madison, $700 more per car on average in front-end gross profit, and they reduced their discount performance from 3% to 2% on average. Fremont, $50,000 in gross profit in 2 months. They said Path to Purchase, which was that trade-in tool that I showed you, along with the digital showroom tool I showed you, has given my sales staff the confidence to justify the appraisal number with the customer, which led to some significant improvements. Large Honda store in South Florida, an additional $19,000 on trade-ins. It fits in great with our value selling philosophy by justifying our trade offer with evidence that the customer provided to us. Last month, we made an additional $19,000 and 69 trade-ins. You do that, you repeat that performance every month over the course of the year, you're looking at another just about $250,000. Pretty impressive results. Last point here was to use tech to guide adoption. The auto industry struggles with high turnover and low trust, and tech can help. I just happened to look at the NADA workforce study recently, and guess what? It got worse. Turnover got worse. When we thought it couldn't get any worse than the 74% it was last year, it went up even higher. What we hear that we need to provide a guided experience. We need to make sales staff instant experts in supporting your price and driving profits. 7 in 10 dealers that we surveyed said their salespeople have told them they don't have enough training or information. Imagine that. You don't have enough training, you don't have enough information, and you don't want to work there. There's really high turnover. Makes a lot of sense. Regular training was considered the biggest opportunity to increase profitability of the dealers that we surveyed, yet we're still not doing it. So here's the number. 80% car sales consultants have the highest turnover in the industry at 80% in 2018. That's amazing. So if you have a sales staff of 10 people, 8 of those 10 people will not be here next year. So we really need to think about, are we equipping our folks with the right tools and the right training in order to set them up for success and serve our customers better? I think we'll get quite a bit better results. Now we need to focus on 100% adoption to drive total profit. And you have to measure things so you can constantly improve the experience you deliver to get profitable results. What you don't measure, it makes it nearly impossible to improve on. So if you're doing business with any vendors, and there's a lot of new emerging technology out there, and if they have a hard time measuring not only who uses your tool on a regular basis, but measuring the ROI of their tool, and an ROI based on the folks that use it and the folks that don't use it, I would really ask for that, or I would probably look at other options out there, because I know there's some really expensive tools out there that are great when they're used properly. They're awesome when they're used properly, but you have to be able to measure those results. I'm going to remind these 4 questions before we get into the rest of this measurement piece, because these are important, and I wanted to make sure that I reinforce this. If your vehicles are not online, if you do not have real pictures, if you do not have factual descriptions, and you do not have an accurate price, the rest of all of the digital retailing efforts you're doing don't matter a whole lot, because you're not going to be successful. Now, there's little things that you can start to measure if you're not measuring already that can help you. You know, for instance, your time to market. When we're talking about, you know, photos and descriptions and pricing, making sure that that car is, you know, not frontline ready, but online ready. Use solutions to measure your time to market and find out, you know, do I have my problem with my photo vendor that only comes around 2 weeks, so my time to market's horrible because of that? Or do I have, I lost a detailer, so the cars aren't getting ready as fast, or maybe there's a bottleneck in service. You need to be able to evaluate those things with the proper tools. Next, to do and drive employee engagement. Like I said, you need to use technology solutions to provide insight onto who on your team is delivering and who needs more training to be effective, right? So you need to be able to take a look at it and see who on my team is using this tool, what kind of results are they getting, and when they use it, what kind of results are they getting when they don't use it? You know, great tools out there that you can measure not only store by store if you're in a group, but user by user in an individual store. Third one, adoption for profit. You can see usage trends and how that affects your profitability with a lot of tools that are on the market, including ours. You know, leverage your vendors to do additional training when needed. This is advice that I got a long time ago when I was in a dealership, and I continue to use through the years, and I advise people do this all the time. It's so hard to find time to train your own people. I know this. Some big dealer groups and even small dealer groups have trainers on staff even, or great relationships with trainers in the industry that come in. Even if you don't want to make that financial investment, the truly good vendors out there, at the very least, will do a webinar with your folks just like this, and many of them will come to your store and train your folks free of charge, included in what you pay them every month. And I would not only ask for that, but I would demand it in many cases, because most folks that I've encountered definitely need this. So if you leverage your technology to drive consistency, you're going to find a couple things. You need to establish a simple sales process by providing your sales team tools you can measure. And simple is the key word there. I've seen some amazingly articulated sales processes that are super detailed, but they're really hard to follow, and people don't adopt it. And especially when we look at turnover as high as it is, if you've got a 22-step sales process and you expect people to follow that when there's 80% turnover in the industry, I think it's just wishful thinking. More people can be successful with less training if you've got a simple sales process, right? And you get to see the results when they're following this guided process. Number two, help your customers help themselves. Make it easy for customers to answer their own questions at home. The more that you can do to help them answer their own questions at home, the better off you're going to be. When your customers feel in control, they rate their experience highly. I know there's quite a few people likely on this call that pay attention to CSI on a regular basis, and rather than asking them to give you a 10 out of 10, they'll enthusiastically give you a 10 out of 10 because they were impressed with what you're able to do. And you can continue a customer-led process in store with that technology. Third piece here, empower managers with easy-to-use technology to enable accountability, coaching, and TOs on the fly. So last point here, technology alone does not help you sell more cars. I say this every day, and I'm the executive vice president at a technology company that serves the automotive industry. But technology alone does not and will not help you sell more cars. Success in this omni-channel world is all about a collaborative process, and it's all about your people, making it easy for them to use it on a regular basis. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. If you have any you want to email me, please feel free. This is my email. I check it all day long on my cell phone. So I'd be happy to interact with you, answer any questions that you have, mcavanaugh@maxdigital.com. And if we have any questions, I'll address them now.
Okay, Mike, thanks very much. And we do have questions, so let's get started. How do you recommend getting old school sales managers to understand that the market is changing and that we need to service internet customers with the same level of professionalism and urgency we would if they were in the dealership?
That's a great question. So that's a question that we get asked on a regular basis as well. And that's a question that I had to help solve as the COO of a dealer group with, several old school managers all the time. And the proof is really in the pudding. I think, if you're part of a group, when you've got managers or staff that are utilizing the technology and it works, the results are contagious. People see that they're getting better results than another store, and they tend to do that. When you implement technology into a store, I always say look for a champion, somebody that is going to be the champion of that product. Let those results speak for themselves. And then you get the people that were, a little hesitant, then they start to use it, and you get the people that were completely against it. Eventually they want to come on board and they want to use it as well. But it's really only with consistency. And my favorite saying is that it has to be a pull, not a push. When you implement new technology, you have to make people feel like they're part of the solution. So if you're evaluating any new technology, I think you have to make those old school managers part of the evaluation process. It can't be done at the GM or the owner level, and then just, kind of said from on high that, here's what we're going to use, and you're going to use it or you're not going to work here, or you better use it. They have to be part of the solution in order to really embrace the technology as well. And, I think, getting your vendors involved throughout that process with those folks that are going to be detractors, that are going to have resistance, get those folks involved and let the people that overcome those obstacles on a regular basis help you, because nobody wants to pay for software that doesn't get used in a dealership every month.
Your last slide was pretty startling. Technology alone does not help you sell more cars. If you could play professor for a second, what mistakes has the automotive retail world made in adjusting to this technology onslaught over the past decade or so?
Yeah, so, I've made some of these mistakes myself, and I've seen a lot of dealerships make these mistakes as well, but it is I think everybody looks for the easy button. We remember those commercials, I think it was Staples had the easy button, and we think that we can install the easy button on our website and it's going to sell more cars. And unfortunately, there's a saying that's, who's the easiest person to sell, and it's another salesperson. Well, most of us that came up in the automotive industry that either ended up as a GM or an executive manager as an owner, we were salespeople too. So we get sold by vendors that come out here and say, this is so easy. It's going to be, 2 days. We get everything installed and set up, and you're going to sell so many more cars. We hear the saying all the time, if you sell one more car, it's worth the investment. But just installing it on your site, maybe it'll get you another lead, some of these solutions that are out there. But if it's creating such a contentious process that customers are now visiting more dealers than they were when there's all this technology out there, we have to really examine it and say it just doesn't work, and really have to take a look at it and say, this has to be part of my process. And again, I go back to involving everybody that's involved with it in the evaluation of a product before it's implemented, is get some feedback from your salespeople that the tool is going to be used with primarily in many cases, that they need to understand how it works on the website and what the customer goes through when they're shopping for a vehicle on your site before they come into the store. And I think when you've got a really smooth process and everybody educated and trained on how to operate it works a lot better.
And I think this is a related question to the previous one, but it says you did not mention the importance of true leadership in accomplishing a success story. Could you please address this?
Wow, that's an excellent question, and that's a challenge that I believe we face in this industry all the time. Part of that is because of the turnover, and oftentimes, the person who is the top salesperson gets promoted to the manager without any kind of, formal leadership training, and maybe there wasn't an interview process. It was just kind of a next up process. But, without good leadership, you can't expect people to follow it either. So, I mean, good leadership's at the core of all of this, with any kind of change management. And I think that's the thing that we forget oftentimes, is that buying software, for instance, for a dealership, it's a change management exercise, because you're changing the way that your customers interact with you. You're changing the way that your employees interact with your customers. And there has to be leaders that believe in what you're doing, how that aligns with the vision, and really a culture of wanting to serve customers, right? So I think, good leadership is at the core of all of this. And absent of that, it's going to be really hard to be successful with anything,
Do these strategies sit at the top of a dealer's pay plan, or do they need to adjust it in order to implement these techniques?
Okay, so do these strategies sit on top of a dealer's pay plan, or do they need to adjust it in order to implement these techniques? So I've seen a couple different ways to execute things here, but I would say, early on, I've seen some technology be incentivized to use the technology to get early adoption and then phased out. But I don't necessarily think that, you necessarily need to pay somebody more money if the deal goes through, some new tool or new technology. I may not be addressing the question right, but maybe that's a good one. If I don't answer that correctly, I would say maybe send me an email and we can connect, and I'd be happy to talk through that with you. But I probably need a little bit more background to make sure that I address that correctly.
Okay, we have tools to connect, so we'll make sure that happens. This is more of a comment than a question, but I think you can incorporate it into a question. Real photos that are professionally taken with a good background and or video make a huge difference. And I guess the way I could frame that as a question is, what can one do to make sure that you've got real professional quality photos with an unexorbitant price?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and that's the world that we live in on a regular basis. We handle syndication, photos and descriptions and comments for, dealers across the country, some of the largest dealer groups in the country at MAX. So we look at this on a regular basis, and even track engagement on this. And this was something that I lived in running a dealer group as well. But yeah, I mean, the photos that are taken professionally, that are quality, have much better engagement than those photos. And the research we did with consumers as well, the low quality photos, the no photos, the stock photos, they don't have good engagement because they're not answering some of the core questions that the customer has about, is this vehicle right for me? If they can't see the real actual color of that specific vehicle, that's a major determining factor for a lot of consumers when they're buying a car. So those real professional photos, and especially those backgrounds, I know there's a lot of dealerships that don't have much room. And, that gray concrete wall and the, wore out asphalt on the lot doesn't make for a beautiful background of a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 vehicle. So I think that's an excellent point that they made.
Okay. And one final question, and again tied to that last Stark slide that you showed, where you said success in an omni-channel is all about the collaborative process. But do you really think that the industry can get to this point? And if so, How long will it be before all dealers are, or at least a high percentage of dealers are adopting an omni-channel approach?
You know, I'll go back to the simplicity of how I define an omni-channel approach, and there's a lot of people that define an omni-channel approach differently. You know, some would say that the entire thing needs to be online and the experience has to be 100% exactly the same online as it is in store. And I think eventually that's utopia that everybody strives for. But I think at the core of simply answering the customer's questions that they need before they come into your store and not trying to be evasive or not trying to push too hard for an appointment, or communicate with that customer in a means that they don't want to communicate in. I think to get the majority of dealers to be able to do that, to be able to provide the information with a good, you know, UI online and then reinforce that process in store, I think there's a lot of dealers and a lot more dealers than people would expect. And you can't categorize them as to are these East Coast dealers, West Coast dealers, dealers in major metros, rural dealers, that are doing this. We see at Max, we see dealers in some of the most rural parts of the country that are some of the most innovative dealers. And we see some of the biggest dealer groups in the country, publicly and privately owned dealerships, that are adopting these processes in their stores. And I think the industry as a whole has more of an open mind than I've ever seen in the industry. And I started working with my dad at a dealership in Detroit when I was 8 years old, right? So I've been in here almost my whole life. I have never seen the industry as open-minded as they are right now. Now, there are exceptions to that rule and people that are still really adverse to change, because that's human nature. People are adverse to change. But I would say, you know, 5 years from now, certainly we're going to see the tide shift to the majority of people adopting to this omni-channel approach. And I think we're going to see this increase year over year over year. Unfortunately, from a data and measurement perspective, this is not a really clearly defined thing. So we have to look at, you know, what types of tools are dealers using and utilize surveys to see, you know, a subset of dealers, are they utilizing them or not. But I think that's something good to measure over time.
All right. We shall keep watch. And Mike, thanks so much for your thought-provoking and honest assessment of the state of the retail world these days. That is going to do it for this webinar, folks. I want to give a special shout-out to all of you who asked questions. If you learned something from this session, and I don't see how you could not, please spread the word. The recording is going to be available in about an hour. You're going to find it at autonews.com/powertraining. As we draw to a close here, a survey is going to open up on your screen. Your feedback helps us get better, and so please help us do that. Thanks again to Mike and to Max Digital for bringing us this presentation. Thanks to all of you for joining us, and on behalf of everyone at Automotive News, have a great rest of your day. So long.